Have you ever wondered why certain individuals seem to possess an invisible armor against life's most brutal assaults? They navigate betrayal, loss, and uncertainty with a composure that appears almost supernatural, as if they've discovered a secret that transforms suffering into strength. What if this isn't a genetic gift or lucky circumstance, but rather an ancient technology of the mind, refined over millennia and available to anyone willing to forge their consciousness into an unbreakable shield? Tonight we embark on a profound exploration of 11 Stoic principles that will fundamentally rewire how your mind processes adversity, criticism, and the relentless chaos of modern existence. These aren't temporary band-aids or superficial affirmations. They are the foundational stones of an inner fortress that has protected human dignity through plagues, wars, exile, and every conceivable form of suffering. If you're ready to discover what true mental invincibility looks like, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Inner Dominion, because what we're about to explore together will challenge everything you believe about emotional resilience. Share this with someone who deserves to know that their mind can become their greatest sanctuary. And let's begin building that unshakable foundation together. The first principle that begins your transformation into mental invincibility is perhaps the most radical shift you'll ever make. You must accept that your perception, not your circumstances, determines your experience of reality. Marcus Aurelius, commanding Roman legions while barbarian tribes pressed against the empire's borders, wrote in his private meditations that we suffer more in imagination than reality, that events themselves carry no inherent emotional charge until we assign meaning to them. When your business partner betrays your trust, when unexpected illness disrupts your carefully laid plans, when financial markets collapse around investments you thought were secure, the untrained mind immediately searches for someone to blame, something to fear, some way to escape the discomfort of uncertainty. But the Stoic mind, forged through daily discipline and philosophical clarity, asks an entirely different question. How will I choose to interpret this experience in a way that builds my character rather than destroys my peace? This isn't about denying reality or pretending pain doesn't exist. It's about recognizing that between any external event and your emotional response lies the most powerful space in human consciousness, the space where you decide who you will become rather than merely react to what has happened. The person who masters this first rule discovers something extraordinary. They become emotionally self-sufficient, no longer dependent on favorable circumstances for their inner stability, no longer victimized by the inevitable changes and challenges that define mortal existence. The second rule strikes at the heart of virtually all human suffering and reveals why most people remain psychological slaves throughout their entire lives. You must learn to distinguish with surgical precision between what is up to you and what is not. Epictetus, who understood captivity in both its literal and metaphorical forms, taught that we are disturbed not by things themselves, but by our judgments about things. And our judgments are always within our control even when nothing else is. Your spouse's mood, your employer's decisions, the economy's fluctuations, other people's opinions about your choices, none of these fall within your sphere of influence. But your response to your spouse's mood, your performance and attitude at work, your financial decisions within whatever economic conditions exist, your commitment to living according to your values regardless of external approval, these remain completely and absolutely under your control. The psychological freedom that comes from truly internalizing this distinction cannot be overstated. When you stop wasting mental energy trying to control the uncontrollable, you discover vast reserves of power that can be directed toward what actually matters. The executive who learns this rule stops losing sleep over market conditions beyond their influence and instead focuses intensely on the strategic decisions that are genuinely within their power. The parent stops trying to control their teenager's choices and instead models the integrity and wisdom they hope to inspire. This isn't resignation or passivity, it's the ultimate form of personal responsibility, taking complete ownership of your responses while releasing yourself from the impossible burden of managing the universe. The third rule confronts one of modern culture's most destructive myths and offers a path to genuine contentment that most people never discover. You must expect nothing while appreciating everything. The untrained mind approaches each day with a complex web of expectations about how events should unfold, how people should behave, how efforts should be rewarded, And when these inevitable expectations collide with reality's indifference to human preferences, suffering becomes unavoidable. But the Stoic mind, trained through daily practice in the art of philosophical living, understands that life owes you nothing, that every breath is an unearned gift, that every moment of consciousness is a privilege rather than an entitlement. This doesn't mean abandoning goals or lowering standards. It means holding your plans lightly while pursuing them with complete commitment, recognizing that your worth as a human being isn't determined by achieving specific external outcomes, but by the quality of effort and character you bring to whatever circumstances arise. When you wake each morning with no demands on the universe, when you interact with people without requiring them to validate your ego, when you pursue your ambitions without attachment to particular results, you discover a form of peace that no external achievement can provide and no external loss can destroy. The fourth rule introduces a practice that initially seems morbid but reveals itself as profoundly liberating once you understand its true purpose. You must contemplate impermanence daily. The Stoics called this memento mori. Remember, you must die, not to cultivate depression or anxiety, but to awaken you from the trance of taking your existence for granted. When you truly absorb the reality that your time here is finite, that everyone you love will eventually be gone, that every problem currently consuming your mental energy is temporary, your entire perspective on what deserves your emotional investment undergoes a fundamental transformation. The argument with your partner that seemed so important this morning suddenly appears less worth the anger when you remember that your time together is limited and precious. The career setback that felt devastating yesterday loses its power to define your self-worth when you recognize it as one temporary chapter in a finite story. The social media criticism that once ruined your week becomes laughably insignificant when measured against the brevity of human existence and the vastness of what truly matters. Impermanence isn't your enemy. It's your teacher, constantly reminding you to invest your precious attention and emotional energy in what will actually matter when you look back on this life. The fifth rule addresses one of modern life's most persistent sources of mental poison and offers complete freedom from a prison most people don't even realize they're trapped within. Other people's opinions are not your business and have no bearing on your actual worth. Every criticism you receive, every judgment passed on your choices, every approval or disapproval expressed about your life says infinitely more about the critic's own mind, experiences, values, and limitations than it reveals about your true character or value as a human being. When someone criticizes your decisions, they are offering you a window into their own belief system, their own fears and insecurities, their own understanding of how life should be lived, nothing more, nothing less. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent to feedback or closing yourself off from legitimate opportunities for growth and learning. It means recognizing that your self-worth cannot be outsourced to the fluctuating opinions of others without enslaving yourself to forces completely beyond your control. The person who masters this rule experiences a kind of psychological freedom that most people never taste. The ability to act according to their own values and conscience rather than dancing perpetually to the rhythm of external approval. The capacity to remain centered in their own integrity, regardless of whether others understand or appreciate their choices. The sixth rule reveals the hidden power in one of humanity's most undervalued and misunderstood capacities. Silence is your secret weapon against a world addicted to noise, reaction, and constant communication. In an era where everyone feels compelled to have an opinion about everything and share every thought that crosses their mind, the Stoic understands that silence often accomplishes what 1,000 words cannot. When falsely accused, sometimes silence speaks louder than defensive explanations. When provoked by someone seeking a reaction, sometimes restraint demonstrates more strength than retaliation. When facing uncertainty or complex situations, sometimes quiet reflection serves you better than frantic action or anxious discussion. This isn't about becoming passive, withdrawn, or failing to advocate for what matters to you. It's about choosing your battles with wisdom, understanding that your mental and emotional energy is finite and precious, recognizing that not every provocation deserves a response, and not every misunderstanding requires correction. The person who learns to sit comfortably in silence, with their own thoughts, with interpersonal conflict, with uncertainty about the future, develops a kind of inner authority and presence that no amount of arguing or explaining can provide. Your silence becomes a sanctuary where clarity emerges and wise decisions are born. The seventh rule confronts the exhausting modern compulsion to have an opinion about everything and share every opinion you have. You must learn to conserve your mental energy for what truly matters. Every political debate you feel compelled to engage in on social media, every argument you can't resist joining at work or social gatherings, every opportunity to correct someone's misconceptions or defend your positions, drains the finite well of your psychological resources, leaving less energy available for actually building the life you want to live. The Stoic mind recognizes that most of the issues that trigger our need to be right, to educate others, to defend our perspectives, are ultimately trivial in the context of what actually matters for human flourishing. When you stop needing to win every argument, when you stop feeling obligated to correct every mistake you witness, when you stop feeding your ego with the temporary satisfaction of proving others wrong, you discover vast reserves of mental energy that can be redirected toward developing your character, improving your relationships, pursuing meaningful work, and cultivating the inner life that determines the quality of your existence. The eighth rule introduces a practice that seems counterintuitive in our comfort-obsessed culture, but builds genuine resilience in ways that no amount of theoretical knowledge can provide. You must regularly embrace voluntary discomfort. The ancient Stoics practiced what they called poverty training, deliberately exposing themselves to cold, hunger, simple food, hard beds, and various forms of manageable hardship, not out of masochism or self-punishment, but to build confidence that they could handle whatever life might present. Modern existence, with its emphasis on convenience, comfort, and the avoidance of any unnecessary difficulty, often leaves us psychologically fragile, terrified of discomfort, and completely unprepared for the inevitable challenges that define human experience. But when you voluntarily expose yourself to manageable forms of discomfort, cold showers that shock your system awake, periods of fasting that remind you of your body's resilience, challenging physical workouts that prove your capacity to push through resistance, difficult conversations that strengthen your ability to navigate conflict, financial restraint that builds confidence in your ability to live with less, you discover something profound about your own capabilities. Discomfort is temporary and survivable, but the confidence gained from deliberately navigating it lasts and compounds over time, creating an unshakable foundation of self-trust. The ninth rule addresses one of the most corrosive mental habits of our interconnected age and offers complete liberation from a form of self-torture that destroys more dreams than any external obstacle ever could. You must focus relentlessly on your own progress rather than comparing yourself to others' achievements. The comparison trap has been amplified exponentially by social media platforms that present everyone's highlight reel as the backdrop against which you judge your own behind-the-scenes reality, your struggles against others' apparent successes, your daily challenges against others' curated presentations of effortless accomplishment. The Stoic mind recognizes this as a form of psychological self-harm that serves no constructive purpose and actively undermines the steady progress that comes from consistent daily effort aligned with your own values and goals. True mental immunity comes from understanding that your only meaningful competition is with your previous self, that the only progress worth measuring is the distance between who you were yesterday and who you are today. Are you more disciplined in your daily habits than you were last month? More patient and understanding with your family? More focused on what actually matters rather than what merely appears urgent? More aligned with your deepest values in the decisions you make? These questions lead to genuine growth and sustainable satisfaction. The 10th rule reveals the hidden strength available in one of life's most challenging and inevitable experiences. You must learn to use every obstacle as training for your character rather than evidence of your victimhood. The Stoic doesn't just endure difficulties, they extract maximum value from them, viewing every setback as a curriculum in resilience, every criticism as practice in emotional regulation, every loss as education in what truly matters for human happiness. This isn't about pretending that difficulties are blessings in disguise or that pain isn't real. It's about refusing to let any experience be purely negative, always asking what qualities this situation is calling you to develop. When your business faces financial challenges, you develop problem-solving skills, mental toughness, and clarity about what truly matters for your professional fulfillment. When important relationships end, you learn about your own patterns in connection, discover what you truly value in partnership, and develop the self-sufficiency that makes you attractive to healthier relationships. When health issues arise, you discover reserves of inner strength you didn't know existed, gain clarity about priorities that abundance and comfort often obscure, and develop compassion for others facing similar struggles. The obstacle doesn't just block the path you thought you wanted to travel. It becomes the path itself, shaping you into someone capable of handling whatever comes next with grace and wisdom. The 11th and final rule synthesizes all the others into a way of being that makes you virtually untouchable by the chaos of external circumstances while keeping you fully engaged with life's beauty and meaning. You must learn to live according to your values rather than your moods. Your emotions are weather systems in the sky of your consciousness, sometimes stormy and turbulent, sometimes calm and clear, always changing and ultimately temporary. But your values are like the mountains beneath the sky, unmoved by atmospheric conditions, providing stable reference points for navigation, regardless of the emotional climate you're currently experiencing. When you feel discouraged by temporary setbacks, your values remind you that persistence and patience are more important than immediate results. When you feel angry at someone's behavior, your values guide you toward justice and understanding rather than revenge or contempt. When you feel afraid of uncertain outcomes, your values encourage you to act with courage and integrity rather than retreating into safety and comfort. Living this way requires constant vigilance and daily practice, but it creates an internal stability that no external force can shake, a consistency that allows others to trust you because your actions flow from enduring principles rather than fluctuating feelings. These 11 rules aren't merely intellectual concepts to be understood and filed away. They are practices to be lived daily, disciplines to be developed over years, shields to be forged through consistent application in real-world situations. The mind protected by these principles doesn't become hard, unfeeling, or disconnected from human experience. It becomes flexible like water that flows around obstacles, strong like steel that bends without breaking, and clear like mountain air that provides perfect visibility regardless of the weather below. As you prepare to leave this moment of reflection and return to the complexities of your daily existence, carry with you this understanding. True security comes not from arranging the external world to match your preferences, but from building an internal world that can thrive regardless of external conditions. The ancient Stoics discovered something that our comfort-obsessed culture has largely forgotten, that the mind, properly trained and consistently disciplined, becomes a fortress more impregnable than any physical structure, a sanctuary more peaceful than any external environment, a source of strength more reliable than any external support system. What kind of person will you choose to become in the face of life's inevitable challenges, and how will you begin building that unshakable foundation today?